All right, everyone. Welcome to another episode of In the Rack podcast. My name is Chad, and I am with a couple of amazing people, actually. I'm actually in Costa Mesa, California at the Bedros Keuilian Live Event. I'm here with Owen Johnston. He is a physical therapist in San Diego. He owns Advanced Physical Therapy and Wellness. Correct. And I'm also here with Chris Stepien, sorry.
It's okay.
And he owns Barefoot Rehab, which is in New Jersey. So we're kind of like all over the map here, which is pretty sweet. And we all got connected, and we're super excited to just kind of rip this morning. We're on like the terrace, if you will, in the gazebo, just having a good morning. So we all got a little workout in this morning. So now we're just gonna go like rip on just life. And I just want to kind of hear a little bit more about you guys and your stories, and everything that you guys have been through, the amazing things that you guys are doing in the space, because, that is super important, with giving everybody motivation to kind of not only make themselves better, but maybe it's something that they may want to do, and it's like, how can I do that? So I met Owen at PT BizCon, which is Aaron LeBauer's main event that he hosted this year. Well, I actually didn't physically meet Owen, but at that point in time, Owen did have a mohawk and tattoos, and I was like, I got to meet this guy. And we just kind of got sidetracked, and it just never happened, but we did connect later on that week, and we were like, dude, we got to meet, and we've just been connected ever since. And I finally got to meet him here in California. So I'm super excited to meet him. And then Chris, I met through Owen. So amazing connections being made here. So Owen, why don't you tell me, we'll start with you. Why don't you tell me a little bit about your story, your journey, opening up your own PT practice. It's only been a year for you, pretty much, just over, right?
It'll be 2 years next month.
Yeah, 2 years. Yeah. That's awesome, man. So I'd like to hear a little bit about your story, about why you decided to open up maybe your own practice, and, all the things that you're doing right now.
Okay.
In the space.
Sounds good. So I'm going to share my quick story about when I was in PT school, and there was a guest speaker, and she worked in a acute rehab, neuro. And she was like, she started off going like, how many people in here want to work in acute rehab, neuro? And there's like crickets, maybe one or two people, like the Pete's people, that raised their hand. And she was like, okay, well, how many people in here want to do outpatient ortho? And 99% of the class raised their hand, all excited, myself included. And she like looked defeated and was like, yeah, I did too. And then things changed. And I was like, whoa, what do you mean things changed? Like things aren't going to change for me. I'm going to go work for a small outpatient clinic, and I'm going to live my best life. I'm going to live like a simple man, like Leonard Skinner's song, and it's going to be great.
Yeah.
And then I got out into the real world, and I was at an insurance-based practice, and my mentor is great. I love him to death, Dr. Caleb Stewart. He is by the book. There's no illegal activity going on there, and it costs him, definitely. But I was still seeing like 4 patients an hour, about 30 patients a day. Within 2 years, I got burnt out, and just like she said, things changed.
Yes.
And so I went and worked for home health, and my goal was to work for Kaiser, so I worked for another company and get some home health experience. I solved 2 problems. I went from 30 patients a day to like 5 patients a day. And then I also got a 40% increase in pay.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, whoa, that's pretty great. My psychological break, this is cool. Then I went and moved down to San Diego, worked for Kaiser. And I thought I was going to retire with Kaiser, man. I worked for them for about 4 years, and everything was maximized. It was pay, Con Ed, time off that I was actually able to take off. It was great, other than not being fulfilled as a PT.
Yeah.
I got into PT to help like the injured athlete get back on the field, or like the guy that's too afraid to throw, the head coach of his kid's baseball team that's too afraid to throw the ball because his shoulder hurts too bad. Not necessarily help grandma roll over in bed. I mean, we can use the terminology like, patient caregiver education, standby assist, bed mobility, shower transfer, car transfer, whatever. I mean, it's helping people roll over in bed. And that's not why I became a PT. So I was not fulfilled as a PT, but I was doing great. Thought I was going to retire. They had a pension, all that stuff. And then they came out with those COVID mandates and vaccination requirements and stuff. And I realized, I'm like, wow, the government's really created a bunch of indentured servants. And I was like, no, I can't go through with any of this stuff. And I put in for my religious exemption, and I was very outspoken about it.
Sure.
And they were like, we got to get rid of this guy. So they terminated me very quickly. I was one of the first people terminated because they said I was going to be on unpaid admin leave. And I was like, no, you're going to pay me, and in writing and all the stuff. And
Yeah.
they did end up paying me.
Yeah, of
They
course.
paid me all of it. So I was like, cool, I'm going to open up my own cash-based practice then. And I didn't even necessarily know what that meant. But my wife, who was a retired PT because she left the field from being burnt out,
Sure.
maintained her license, but for 6 years she had been out. She looked at me and was like, I support you, but I want no part in this. And she's like, have fun. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. So went out. For the first 2 weeks, I would have given my projections from those 2 weeks, I probably would have made less than $800. But luckily, I found Aaron from God's path, basically, or he found me from his marketing. Who knows?
Yeah.
And I joined one of his courses. The second week, I was in business, and within 2 weeks after that, by doing what he told me to do, which was very uncomfortable, selling packages like a deer in the headlights, I felt like we made $7,400 that first month. And then he was like, "You should join my mastermind afterwards," and I'm like, "Sure." No problem. I'd be stupid not to.
Yeah.
Joined his mastermind, cleared over 200K the first year, and then continued to scale. And I think now we opened up our brick and mortar location in 6 months, and I built the dream PT job for myself. I'm like, I'm making more money than a home health PT. I can like take time off if I want to and go places. I can pay for whatever Con Ed courses I want. Like, this is the life. And I'm like, and I'm making home health money with a home health caseload. I'm like, you know what? I can't just have this on my own. I got to share it. So now, as the clinic becomes more fully automated, I have a vision that's more national to give every outpatient physical therapist the opportunity to make home health money with a home health caseload in outpatient. Because I feel that outpatient deserves to be paid like that, and home health, they kind of don't.
Yeah.
Like,
dude, your story is probably like most people's story. Like they're just fed up with, the current model that they're in. They're being burnt out, and they're looking for that change, right? They're looking to make that leap, and you actually made the leap because you took action. And it's like, I think that's the biggest thing that most people have a hard time with, and I don't think people really understand either. To clear 200K in your first year is pretty amazing. I mean, I know a lot of cash-based practices that start out and they're not doing that. I mean, they'll be lucky to hit six figures, So for you to do that, I mean, you not only put in the work, but you did the right work. And I know having a coach is part of that success, and I know we talked about this, and I know I talked about this with Chris too, but like it's every coach needs a coach, and it's so important. And I think people don't see the value in how quick you can accelerate not only your personal growth, but your professional growth, and it definitely needs to be more of a thing. And people need to be able to see the value there so that they can actually do the right things and not waste time, right? Because we all know practices that have been in business for years that are still not where they should be. And I think that's the main reason why they're just holding themselves back.
Yeah. Because it was like, what we did in 6 months, it took Aaron 5 years. Because it's like he already made the mistakes. He had the wins and lessons. It took him a long time to get a coach, Bedros.
Yeah.
And then so basically he taught me everything. And I also wanted to break the record too. So I wanted to break his record of most revenue earned. So I really pushed.
You did that?
Yeah. I broke his record of coaching clients. And because I was like, well, it's been done. The mile's been broken under 4 minutes.
Heck
then let's see how far we can push it. But what I like to say is like we took 5 years and turned it into 6 months. And when I tell people I paid $20,000 for the program, like, they look at me like I'm crazy. And I'm like $20,000 for 5 years? Shit, I pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to shave 5 years off that I can spend with my family and my friends like you guys.
1,000%. Think about all the money that you've lost over those 5 years.
Yes.
It's more than 20,000. I can tell you that much.
Yes.
That's wild. So I love the story, man. That's so cool. So you're running your practice now. You're working with Aaron. What's your vision for advanced PT and wellness for like the next, say, 3 to 5 years?
Great question. And yeah, I'm working with Aaron. I'm actually coaching for Aaron for free. Like I do a call for him once a month, and just to add value, to give back. Currently I'm in another mastermind while I'm in Greg Todd's inner circle, Smart Success Healthcare. He's got 3 tiers. So he's got his regular mastermind. He's got an invite only. I think they got to be, I forgot what it is, but they got to be clearing over 300K or something like that in order to be there, because it costs 50K a year. And then he's got his golden ticket. He only lets 3 people in there, and it costs 100K a year. So my goal And our goal, because my wife joined in after 6 months when she saw the impact it had on the patient's life. She's like, I want in on this now. And I'm like, okay, cool. So our vision is to, like Greg Todd said, what he told Kelly, what Kelly did, Kelly Louie, is become a unicorn, grow a 7-figure practice, get it fully automated, and then get into coaching. And like I said, since I want to give every outpatient physical therapist the ability to make home health money with a home health caseload, I'm not going to do that from just advanced physical therapy and wellness. So I'm going to do PT launch. I'm not even going to need to change Alex Hormozi's name. I'm going to do PT launch, and we're going to go to people, build out the systems with them, and then allow them to start launching or relaunching their cash practice, because no one else in the space has a go to you, do it with you model. Right. It's all coaching and remote teaching, which is great. Yeah, that worked for me, but not everyone wants that.
That's right. A lot of people like the one-on-one. They like the in-person stuff too, and I think it creates more accountability, but it also creates that, like you said, it's like step-by-step guidance that, you get little bits and pieces being through the masterminds, because I've been mastermind as well. And you feel like you're kind of missing something, you know what I mean? And it's not for everybody, like you said. I think that's a cool model. I think that's great. Yeah, I'm excited to see where that goes. All right, Chris, on to you, my friend. So I just met you recently, but Owen's been talking a lot about you, and you've been doing some great things, and you're a chiropractor in New Jersey. And you've got a lot of things going on. I mean, yeah, you get your successful practice, but then you also do a lot of technique-based work that you're trying to promote as well. So tell me a little bit about your practice first, like kind of how you got started there. I'd also like to hear a little bit about you working with Bedros and what made you make that decision to want to work with Bedros. Because I mean, that's a big jump, right? Like this, and you did that a while ago, right?
Last August was when I started with, but I also did the project in 2019.
That's right. Okay. Yeah. So I know it's been a few years since you've kind of been like in his circle, kind of working with him. So I'd like to hear a little bit more about how that worked for you and what the reasoning was for you to do that, and like what your goal was. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. As far as the practice goes, I started in 2010. Okay. So 13 years. Yeah. I graduated and pretty much just started my own practice, and I did cash right off the start.
Yes.
It's interesting to me hearing some of the conversation around like systems and structure, because I don't spend like any time thinking about it. It's just been a thing that we've been doing. So I remember it was $45 a visit for 15-minute visits, and I had treated a bunch of different CrossFit gym owners, and my whole purpose was I just want to show them the value I can deliver.
Yeah.
And then I had 3 of them invite me into their spaces, and then one of them was referring me a ton of people, and I just asked her, I was like, do you want me to start my practice here? And she was like, that'd be great. And so that's how I started. And then within a year I got to around like 70 patients a week, and then I started stair stepping up, although I went up to like $65 a visit, and I was there for like 5 years. I started a CrossFit gym from 2012, and I failed massively in 2017. And so then in 2015-ish, I was really annoyed at my skill set and my delivery of results. So as far as my mentor, Dr. Brady from Newburyport, Massachusetts, I saw somebody who started in 2012 surpass my skill set in 2015. So that really pissed me off, and it made me really angry. So around 2016, 17, I remember making a decision that I was going to train as much as I physically possibly could train on an adhesion release, or his system was integrative diagnosis or manual adhesion release as possible. So I spent over $100,000 that year, and then I was going up to Newburyport twice a month, so 24 times in a year. And then within a year of that, I went from $65 a visit to $85 a visit, and then I went to a $2,500 case fee up front, and then now we're at a $3,600 case fee for 16 treatments and 15-minute visits. So that's our structure of how we do things, and it's all based on we treat chronic pain sufferers. So do we qualify them? Have you had pain more than 6 months? Have you seen at least 3 doctors or therapists? Then you qualify to see us. And it's all based on our social media presence, referrals, and just people, they're struggling with answers. I don't like, there are 3,000 chiropractors in New Jersey. There are 8,000 physical therapists, and I struggle with depression. So I never want to play the game that like, I might as well not exist if I'm going to be another chiropractor or PT. Like, so the adhesion route and the chronic pain really speaks to me. But as far as Bedros with coaching, I've always been a fan of coaching and investing. I truly believe Jay Ferrugia yesterday was talking about the sabotage.
Yes.
And I was like, that's fucking brilliant. Because, am I allowed to curse?
Yes. You can say anything you want. Yes.
That was brilliant, because I think the ultimate question that I'll talk to people now that I'm coaching people with this technique is, how quickly do you want to achieve your goal?
Yes.
And then they can tell me how quickly or not. And then I'm saying, okay, if you want to get this goal as quickly as possible, you need somebody. It doesn't have to be me. You need somebody to get here. And then if they have an incongruency, then just call it out and be like, you're fucking lying to yourself, because you're saying you want to go fast, but then you're not going to get support. Do you see how this isn't working? All of the best athletes in the entire world. I've been listening to Kobe Bryant a lot. With Tim Grover, it's just everybody has their coaches who bring them where they have to go. And Bedros, since I did the project in 2019, what I love about him is that guy calls my shit out.
I love it.
Dude. Just a couple weeks ago, he was like, "You're a liar. You're selfish. Your kids are gonna have to." And I was like, "Damn, B." And you're right, and I appreciate that type of accountability, because without that, I will be slippery and avoid doing the things that I have to do. So he's been integral from doing the project 4 years ago and with coaching in the last year to say, Chris, you said you want this. You have a family and patients and staff who are depending on you, and now you have to fucking do it, or stop lying to yourself.
That's right.
And that was integral.
That's awesome. And I really do. I mean, I know not everybody responds well to that type of feedback, but I mean, I do, and I know you do too, Owen. Yeah. And honestly, I think that, I know everybody's a little bit different, right? But I think if you're not ready for it, those are the people that actually need it more than the people that aren't, right? Like, so if you know that you're sabotaging yourself and you can't take the feedback, I feel like that's something that you have to work on yourself. Like, you're convincing yourself, that, you may not need this help, or you may not need to do this or X, Y, Z. But it's like, at the end of the day, you need somebody to call you out on your shit. Like, I met Bedros through my coach, who was Allie Gilbert, and she's been my coach for about a year and a half in terms of like my programming and my nutrition and all that. And she has no problem calling out my shit. And that was the reason why I hired her as a coach, and I loved it, and I feel like when your coach is a little bit too lax on you, it gives you the leeway to get away with things, right? And then you're back to self-sabotaging yourself, because you've convinced yourself that, it's not the right time, or it's like, it's never the right time to do anything. But I think that that's a great point that, I really think that when you're looking at a coach to bring you to that next level, you need to find somebody that's going to keep you accountable and call you on your shit. And if you can't take the shit that's being called on you, then that's something that you have to work on. You're just not ready for the coach, unfortunately. But I think that's what definitely separates people, especially when you're talking about like people that are going to take advantage of that feedback and go for success, and people that aren't, and then just stay where they are, that's a great point. That was a good talk with Jay. Yeah. I enjoyed that a lot. And I love Bedros's message just across the board. I definitely gravitate more towards that type of style anyways, So you've got your massage, I'm sorry, not massage. You've got your, is it myofascial technique, or is it kind of like a scar? Can you explain that a little bit?
Sure. So adhesion release methods. Yes. I tried to keep it as simple and like direct and straightforward as possible. Sure. So Dr. Brady used to teach for active release technique.
Okay.
Up through like 2006.
Yes. Okay.
And what he noticed, I love Dr. Leahy. He started ART, but he noticed that Dr. Leahy was packing hundreds of doctors into these seminars, and it was about like these seminars and certifying doctors. And Dr. Brady was noticing things like, I remember he was teaching Leahy was teaching longus coli. You come lateral to SCM, and you push SCM out of the way to go to longus coli in the front of the spine. And Bill's like, and he's like trying to do stuff, and this is not possible.
Yeah, yeah.
So Dr. Brady saw a bunch of different spots like that in ART, and he said, you know what? I see an opportunity here. I want to take the top 5% of ART providers, and I want to make them the best in the world. It was through more training, especially more diagnosing,
Sure.
respecting adhesion, respecting when somebody does not have adhesion, and fixing people you can fix, and pointing people in the other direction of people you can't. So integrative diagnosis was doing that from 2008 to 2020, and then Dr. Brady retired in 2020. So it's adhesion work,
Sure.
and I use that term precisely because a lot of times people will say, I've had active release technique, I've had myofascial release. It's not the same.
Sure.
And then so providers who have done ART and then they get training with me, or they've had training with Dr. Lytle in St. Louis or Dr. Brady, they just, as soon as they do the training, they're like, it's very different. It's much more precise as far as how you feel tissue, and just really respecting I call it bat sonar, like the 3D imagery of the muscular structures, the nerves or tendons in the body, and then being able to feel adhesion. There are certain principles that you have to respect in order to see if there's adhesion, a problem there. And then once instructors learn, or doctors or therapists learn how to feel that adhesion, then they could start respecting the principles and practicing in practice more diligently, and then holding themselves accountable to the principles and not breaking them. So it's not myofascial release. It's I've realized we're just talking about this, so like
Yes.
most doctors and therapists, they might be listening to this
Yeah.
and be like, okay, so it's myofascial release, cool.
Right. That's why I wanted you to explain it, because I wasn't familiar with the technique either.
Yeah.
So I think more people need to know that there are other techniques out there, because maybe this technique is more appropriate for this person or that person or whatever, right? Like, to have all these tools in the tool bag, is always helpful, and I had never heard that term before. So I wanted to know a little bit more about it. And I don't want to confuse the two, because there's
appreciate that.
obviously a difference,
I
right?
appreciate it very
And,
much.
in respect for what you do too. So I think that the one common thing that we can agree on is that if you're going to do coaching, it's going to cost money, right? Like, you're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars. You're spending $100,000. I spend $100,000. Like, people need to understand that it's going to cost money. Is there any advice that you can give people? I mean, we all understand the value, right? But a lot of times it's hard for people to see the value, right? It's hard for people to say, oh, I don't know if I can afford that, or I don't know if I like, when Bedros was like, yeah, it's going to cost $100,000 this year, or, Greg Todd was like, yeah, it's going to cost $50K this year. Like, what was the deciding factor for you to be like, I probably could put that money elsewhere, which is what most people do, whether it's like in their own pocket, or buy more equipment that they don't need, or buy, more courses that they don't need to take that they've already taken 5 times, or whatever, right? So like, what is the deciding factor that would push somebody to say, this is what I need to do, and I'm okay with spending the money?
Well, I'll tell my story about Greg Todd this last year.
Yeah.
This past June. So I'm already in Aaron's mastermind, and it's technically not going to re-up till November. And basically, he invited me to SHC Live, and I told him I couldn't go. And he's like, no, Owen, like, you got to be here. I just got to get you in front of the people. Like, he wants to blow me up. And he was like, whatever it takes to get you there, if you can just come out for a day, if you got to I know you got to lead your team, build momentum, you got to do that as a leader. But even if you just come out for one day, I got to get you in front of people. I said, okay. And I made it happen. I took a red eye out, which I don't take red eyes.
Yeah.
And I was on the plane, and I was like, I know Greg's going to sell something. I'm not buying anything from Greg. I'm not buying anything from Greg. I was like, I'm going to work with Greg in November, and that's going to be that, because I didn't even know about the inner circle being 50K. I was like, I knew him was going to be in his mastermind, which is 20 or 30K, and I was like, yeah, because Greg has what I want, which is he's had multiple clinics, as well as he's got an amazing coaching program, and he also prioritizes family, which that's one thing that's been missing. Even Bedros doesn't talk about his family. He says not sexy, and even though he's married and has kids. But I want someone that prioritizes that, because I want to prioritize that. So has what you want. But it was not easy spending the 50K. Like, it was a little bit easier, spending like 20K with Aaron, because I was able to put that on one credit card, one zero balance credit card.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it when I went there, and I was like, no, I got to do this now, because his high ticket closer, Anthony Rich, he's a great guy. He can sell you your own stuff. Like, seriously. He basically said there's 3 rules of like masterminds, and joining them and why you do it. One, does a leader or mentor have what you want, or has someone in this program that currently has what you want? Two, are they actively doing it?
Yes.
And then three, therefore, can they collapse time? And since Aaron was able to collapse 5 years into 6 months, and I kind of grew to like the big kid in the room, I was like, well, Ben Bagg said you got to find a new room. So I found a new room. And I was in the room when he had this special breakfast, invite only, his little golden tickets. Yeah, cool little thing. And he was like, it's going to be $50K. And he didn't even have to sell it that hard because he already knew that most of us in there knew the value of coaching. And I was like, cool, I got to go figure some stuff out. Can't commit to this right now because I need to go talk to my business partner, AKA my wife. And the first thing she was like, I took a picture. I kind of started planting the seed because our friends, Kyle Womack and Jen Womack, they were up on stage. I took a picture of them. I was like, they joined Greg Todd's Inner Circle, not the mastermind, the Inner Circle. And first thing Jen texts back, she's like, oh, that's great. How much that cost? And I was like, okay, we'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
And then so I waited till I got back home to tell her about it. And then she was like, okay, yeah, I get it. We're going to do it. How are we going to do it? How are we going to get the money? Because it's supposed to be gut wrenching. If you're putting in a big investment, it's supposed to be gut wrenching and hard. And like I said, Aaron's was actually easy, but this, I looked at my credit cards balances, and the max was $20K, and I was like, well, shit. I thought I was just going to put it on one credit card, like I've done with Aaron's Mastermind the past 2 years, and pay it off throughout the year because it always pays you back. And I was like, oh shit, it took us like a half day for me and her both working on the computers trying to find new credit cards, a strategy so that we weren't going to be applying for 2 in a row and then getting denied from the second one, because that's happened to me before in the past, even though I have no credit card debt, except for what I pay off on the zero balance credit card for coaches throughout the year. So I was like, we had to like order these convenience checks from one. I had to apply for another one, which I only got a $10,000 balance. I'm like, fuck. Okay, that's not enough. I've got $20,000 from these convenience checks, zero balance. We got a $10,000, that's $30K. Okay, where are we gonna get the $20K? Well, okay, we got up until this point to pay off the balance. Okay, well then we're gonna ride it out until like a couple weeks before, and then we're gonna apply for this next one, and then like halfway through, I think, and then we're gonna, if we need to, apply for this next one. But luckily the other one gave us $20K, and so we're like, sweet, we got our $50K, and we could pay for it. But that was hard.
Yeah.
I think
that's a good story to hear because, not everybody has $50K laying around. Just say, here you go, right? Like, how do people actually make this jump? Like, and I know people are always going to say, oh, but it's debt. I don't want to go into debt. But I firmly believe there's good debt and bad debt. And, when you can go into debt that's no different than, getting student loans to get a college education,
Yeah.
I mean, I know some people will say, pros and cons about that as well. But at the end of the day, like, you're going into debt so that you can make more. You know what I mean? I think it's totally worth it, because not everybody has the ability just to throw that down like that. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And it's even better.
Yeah, totally.
It's like that $50K or the $20K for Aaron. It's like my PT program cost me $60K. $60K.
Yeah.
And do you think I made that back in a year, that $60K? No. Every other one of these coaching programs, I have paid it off that year throughout the year. So it's like, and I think I talked about at PT BizCon, like the costs of a small vision, and like the return on investment from my student loans was like less than 5%. But then the return on investment I got from coaching is $3,350. So every dollar that I spend into coaching into myself, I get a $33.50 return. That's like going to the casino and betting one of the high bets and winning every single time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you brought up a good point. Like, I actually just had this conversation with a PT student that we just had, and they're going to PT school, and I asked them why. Like, what's the reason why they're going? Because I hope it's not about the money, because the return on the investment for that education is not what it used to be. These colleges nowadays are $60,000, $65,000, $70,000 a year for an undergraduate education. That's like a 1 year salary coming out of PT school. Like,
and not even, because you got to pay taxes.
And not even, you know what I mean? So the return is not there. And I think that people are just getting, they're kind of getting looped into the idea that they are just privileged enough to make 6 figures coming out of school, and how many, like, hiring new PTs, they come out and they demand, 6 figures, and I want 4 weeks vacation, and I want all the holiday pay. And it's like, I get it's a generational thing. I understand, but you're only going to get paid what the market says you're worth. You know what I mean? And that's the insurance driven world, right? But when we're not taking insurance and it's in our own world, then we make our own market, right? So I think that a lot of people need to understand why they're going into the profession and what they can do to best, not only help themselves, but help the most amount of people they can, right? Because you get out of school and you're just going to go work for this big ass company, and yeah, maybe the bennies are okay, but the pay is shit. And when you actually think about it and you think about all the patients that you're seeing and all the hours that you're working and you actually do the math, the hourly pay, you could probably make more money working at the local grocery store.
Well, the crazy thing is I did the math. And in California, the minimum wage, I think it's like $18 an hour, $16 an hour.
Yeah.
The average PT that's getting out of school is making $70K a year an outpatient.
Yep.
When you do the math, that's less than double minimum wage.
Dude, see what I'm saying?
Yeah. What? 8 years of slaving away to make double minimum wage and work harder too.
Yep. Yeah, it's nuts. It's nuts. It's even like my front desk staff. I pay all my employees very well, but like my front desk staff will make more than entry-level PTs coming out because they're worth it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I love that.
And it's one of those things where it's amazing because like you don't have to. I feel like there's just this stigma around, oh well, I have my doctorate, so I'm worth this much. It's like when you come out of school, you're worth nothing. You're worth nothing. You know what I mean?
Negative money.
Yeah, negative money. You know what I mean? So, but it's great to hear everybody's story and how they've gotten to where they are and make PT what you want to make it, right? That's what I always tell people now. It's just like PT is anything you want to make it. Chiropractic is anything you want to make it. Like I was talking with Owen earlier, and a lot of the chiropractors that I deal with in my area are very much like yourself. Like it's the model has shifted so much now where it's not like, manipulate this, manipulate that. It's, soft tissue work. It's exercise and do like there's everybody's seeing the value, and we're almost becoming like under one umbrella, almost like PTs or chiros are like kind of the same thing. You know what I mean? All depending on their specialty. You know what I mean? So I love the fact that that's the way it's going. And I always tell people now, it's like even in chiropractor or PT, it's like, if you're going to a physical therapist or a chiropractor and you're just getting physical therapy or chiropractic, it's not enough anymore. You know what I mean? I really feel that we need to be the quote unquote primary care providers for our patients, because how many times do we see patients? Like how many hours do we see patients? Like how many times a week do we see patients? Like how many months do we see patients, right? Like how many times they see their primary care, very little, if any, and the amount of times that I'm able to help somebody, whether it's with like their nutrition or their sleep or like optimizing their life in some other way, besides just treating their shoulder pain or their knee pain, it really is just a trickle effect and just makes that whole health approach just that much better. You know what I mean? So I really feel like if you are not doing that and you're just doing quote unquote physical therapy or chiropractic or massage or whatever it is, I feel like you're doing a disservice to your patient,
Yeah, we're talking about like structure and how governments control people and all that shit. Because
1,000%.
I did a post a few weeks ago on Instagram that got a pretty good, like 5 times the amount of traction that my normal posts do. And they were talking about masks coming out in September for COVID in New Jersey. And I was like, telling a story about how someone was telling me this on my shoulder, and I was like, what's going on? This is bullshit. When is Joe Biden gonna go on TV and just be like, yo, the virus, this flu is coming, and you need to eat your vegetables, you need to go get sunlight, you need to exercise. And so I appreciate what you were sharing, is that somebody in people's lives needs to stand for their health. And that means telling them things that most doctors aren't going to be telling them, because the whole system is, I don't want to say it's rigged, but I mean, most medical doctors subconsciously are not just going to talk about vegetables and the sun and stress, and they're not going to do it. So for PTs or chiros or just somebody in their lives in the healthcare system has to stand up for doing what's right by their health.
Yep. Agreed. And I feel it doesn't get enough attention for sure. And you say it's not rigged, but I'm not a conspiracist by any means. I firmly believe it is.
Fair enough.
I really do.
I think so too.
I think it's, it creates a dependency. And I feel like the more dependent we can be, I mean, Bedros talks about this all the time. I think the more dependent that we can be on the government, that's what they want. You know what I mean? They want us to be dependent on medications. They don't want us to know about all these other benefits. And like you said, and this goes along with everything. You know, if you're doing something different, whether it's you're going against the grain, you're bastardized. You know, like physical therapy that doesn't take insurance is bastardized. Chiropractic doesn't take insurance is bastardized. Like, you know, if you're saying, oh, all you need is sunlight and not this medication, or we can get you, like, that's bastardized. You know what I mean? Because it's like, and I used to blame the doctors, and I used to say, oh, dude, they're so corrupt, blah, blah, blah. But I honestly think they're just that much more uneducated about what is because they've been so in this model of like the medical system that's the only way they know how to treat people, whether it's through surgery or medication. They don't know any other way. You know what I mean? It is. And you saw the whole thing, like everybody getting, you know, their licenses taken away or threatened because they were, you know, going against, you know, what everybody else was saying with the COVID vaccine and everything else. I mean, that's just crazy, you know? But yeah, I really do. I agree with you. I think that, you know, there needs to be that person in their lives. And I've seen the change like firsthand. And it not only differentiates you as a healthcare provider, but also your business. So like if somebody's listening to this and like, oh, well, how can I be different in the community? That's a good way, you know, make it less about the physical therapy and more about like the whole health and how everything just kind of works together. Still do your physical therapy, still do your chiropractic, make people better. But how else can you optimize like what you're already doing in the clinic?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And I think on a more spiritual level that this really is a battle of consciousness.
Totally.
I was speaking to a dear friend of mine who has a lot of the same beliefs that I do. He lives in Belgium, and all this COVID stuff came out, and he was talking to me. I saw him recently, and he was talking to me about like the vaccine and the flu and all the shit he's seeing and how crazy it is and all that stuff. And then he was telling me how he's like, Chris, I saw you speaking up on your social media, and I see your comments, and people are like, "Fuck you, Chris," like all this other shit. And when all that stuff happened during COVID, I didn't tell anybody. I didn't even tell people personally what my beliefs were or anything. And what I was thinking is, you're a fucking coward.
Yes.
Because he's looking out for himself and he's scared at what's going to happen to him, but you're letting shit happen to other people that you might be able to change where they're going with that. And that really fucked with me. And I realized that all my life I've had this risk tolerance towards like doing what's right and putting myself in harm's way. But I believe that if we really care about people and our patients, it means being willing to risk that we might lose patients, might lose money, or I might even get in trouble from somebody by standing up for what's right. I market that we host psychedelic ceremonies.
Sure. Yeah.
And these ceremonies have changed my life. They changed my partner's life.
Yes.
And there is obvious risk because they're still Schedule I drugs. And I will share how it's helped my depression, but I feel like I can't hold that shit inside because I've seen it change hundreds of people's lives in New Jersey for people that need that help or support. So I think this can go to a much higher level of finding our truth and speaking that and trusting that there is a higher power that's guiding us and protecting us when, like Bedros said, we're sharing our radiance with the world.
Yes. And I think that a lot of people, whether they're chiropractors or PTs, I feel like a lot of this stuff is outside of the scope of their practice, but it's really not. You know what I mean? And a lot of this stuff too is like you may have a resource for somebody too. I talk about that all the time. It's like working with Allie over the last year and a half, and you know, being involved with, you know, like optimizing my health and all that other stuff. Like I now, a lot of my patients, I have them get lab work done if there's like other things going on that I think might be addressed. Now, I'm not the doctor that takes over that care, but I certainly have a resource of people that I work with that can help them in that area, whether they need it or not, you know? So, and I've seen that change people's lives like crazy, you know? And I feel that it's like, people think that we're like overstepping or anything like that, but it's like nobody else is doing it for them. I go to my primary care and it's like, I don't get any lab work done. It's like, I don't know what's going on with and I had this one guy come in and I use him as like my poster guy. Like he was coming in super unmotivated, had all this shoulder pain, like his training was suffering, like everything was suffering, his marriage and all this other stuff. We did labs. This guy had the lowest T I've ever seen. You know what I mean? So testosterone. So I referred him over to a resource that I have that he's now involved with TRT. And this dude, like over the last 6 months, has changed not only his whole entire life, like his shoulders, amazing. He feels 100%. He doesn't even need to see me anymore, but he still does because like we have that trust built in now, right? Like he wants to make sure that everything's going well, and it's more of like a quote unquote maintenance program. But everything has changed for him. Like not only his pain, but his life, and when you can have an effect on somebody like that, you're like, this is cool. Like it's not just physical therapy. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I mean, I think that's the direction that everything kind of needs to go in. And that's what differentiates us. And that's what gives us the ability to do that outside of the restrictions of, insurance and all that other bullshit. Because we have the time now to spend with these patients and kind of dive in deeper with them versus, well, I only got 30 minutes, so yeah, I don't really have enough time for that. So, you know what I mean? Like my other patient's waiting in the waiting room. You know what I mean? It's bullshit. So, no, I love the fact that that's what you guys are all doing. I think it's cool, and I'm glad to be a part of it for sure. Cool. Awesome. Is there anything you guys want to rip on? Anything else you guys want to rip on? Is there anything you want to mention, Owen?
Yeah. So I'll mention Chris. How I met Chris was he added me on Instagram, and I added him back, and then he messaged me. It's probably his VA, and and I actually stole that and I started using it and sending it to people that were adding me. I literally use his exact words because it got me to respond back, so it gets other people to respond back. Now my VA does it, but I saw that Bedros Keuilian was liking his stuff, and I was like, why is Bedros Keuilian liking this guy's stuff? So I sent a message, said, hey, how do you know Bedros Keuilian? And then his assistant said, hey, this is his assistant, and he went to the project and he's coached under him and stuff like that. And I was like, okay, cool. So that like made me tune in a little bit more. Oh, this guy's being coached. I'm going to pay a little bit more attention to what he's talking about. And then, and I noticed that he did the adhesion release method. At first I was like, oh, it's like adhesion release technique. He's not even going to change the name. He's just like, he's just taking ART and just selling it. Yeah. I was like, does he want to get sued? And then I started noticing that it was different. And he has people flying all throughout the world to see him, like from France and stuff like that. And I was like, hey, I want to get on this. So he was going to do his half day with Bedros. And I figured when he was going to be in town, I said, hey, man, well, how we do this? Like, if you're able to come out a little bit early, like, I'd love you to train my staff on this and then do one of his accelerator courses just for my staff. And then if anyone else wants to join, it was like last minute, but there was a lot of people that were like, oh, I want in this. No one actually showed up. We had like a week. We couldn't really market it. And so I really want to do it at our clinic in the future, like actually market it correctly. But he trained our staff and myself, and literally like the palpation skills are the most important part about it. And like, I've never been able to palpate nerves before. Like I can feel the nerves. I can feel the entrapment of the nerves. A lot of the chronic pain is coming from the entrapment of the nerve. The muscles are guarding and trying to protect the nerve. That's why they're tightened up, and it's kind of creating this feedback loop. But anyways, I describe it as like kind of like peeling open an orange, and all that tissue like in between is like the adhesion. Like it literally is a sniper rifle effect, because you literally have to feel it with no motor input or output. You have to have like a dummy hand, and you have to kind of press along to where you can actually feel it. And that is like one of the skills that you really need to have. And it is literally a sniper rifle approach. Before I was using ART, but when I was using ART, people would be like, well, it came back within 30 minutes to an hour. So then I started having to use like instrument assisted soft tissue mobilization, cups, and ART. I was having to combine all this stuff to get lasting results when I could just do it with this one method. Yeah. And so we use it as a tool, and it's got great test retest. So it's great for cash PTs because it gets the buy-in from the patient to where we can actually afford to charge them what it is worth so that we can get the results that they want. And not only that, but just like they're flying out all over the world to see him, they're flying out, like we had a guy from Guadalajara, Mexico fly out to see us. They're driving in from LA to San Diego to see us because it is unique and it does work. And I wanted to share a little bit more about it, but I'm drawing a blank. So maybe I'll let Chris rip on it a little bit more.
I mean, yeah, thank you for your kind words, Owen. It, I'm not sure what else to say. It's I mean, it's fun to be able to have. We do have patients like drive or fly in all the time. Um, and the most fun part for me is you were asking about Owen and answered how did it feel, or why did you sign up for coaching? And I was talking to a chiropractic friend a couple weeks ago, a dear friend of mine, and he was saying he had 10 weeks of low back pain. It was getting better. Then he saw Dr. Todd from Health Source in All River in Massachusetts, who does ARM, adhesion release methods, and he traded one pass on his femoral nerve and all of his low back pain away. And Mark was like, what the fuck? What just happened? And he's like, Chris, you're onto something. He's like, but I gotta tell you, I'm like making such good money. I'm making like $200,000 a month or a year as an associate. It's so good. But he said, I go to sleep at night and I'm like, am I really helping people? That is my worst nightmare. I would rather die than know I'm leaving shit on the table and not doing everything in my power to fucking help people. And the reason why is because I've talked to Owen about some of his stuff, and I'm curious about your story, but I've have some serious struggles with depression and suicidal ideation. And I remember being 15 years old and on my hands and knees in my bedroom, and there are holes punched in the walls, and fuck you, Chris, I wish you were dead, written all over the walls. My dad didn't know I was depressed. He told me 3 years ago, I didn't know you were depressed as a kid. I'm like, Dad, you're fucking emotionally stunted. But and I remember being like sobbing on the ground and wishing that somebody could help me.
Yeah.
I remember wishing that somebody could help me. And so I just imagine these people in chronic pain, or these people with emotional issues who need psychedelics, and if I don't say something or do something, that they are going to continue suffering the way that I was. So I think like everything that I do, and me hiring Bedros is me trying to help myself as a 15-year-old kid when I wanted to kill myself. And I will not go to sleep at night with really good money and saying, am I really helping people? I'd rather fucking die.
Yes.
And I'd rather my sons know that I chose to die instead of living that life.
So I tell people too, like, everybody, a lot of people that are listening to this know my story. Like, I was full insurance based when I first started my practice, and then I transitioned to cash. And if I wanted to just make money, I would just take insurance. I was making a shit ton of money with insurance. Tons. Like, in my third year, I was almost about to break 7 figures in 3 years. And I had 5 physical therapists on staff. They were all being burnt out. Like, we were just running the fucking, business like every day, like, 7 to 7, like we were just jamming, we were crushing it. Right. And I just felt like I wasn't helping people like I could help people. I felt like I was gypping people. You know what I mean? And for me, exactly like you said, like it was starting to bother me. Like it was, my staff, I could start seeing them, like they were starting to get a little bit like, I use the word unhealthy, but I could see that they were getting burnt out. I could see that they were getting run down. I could see that the drive was kind of like not quite there. And that's not what I wanted. Like when I opened up my own practice, I wanted to make a better solution for people. And I feel like I was just doing the same thing that everybody else was fucking doing. You know what I mean? And could I have made a great living? Yeah, I'd probably be making even more money now. But I decided that what was more important for me and what could help me sleep at night is, how can I best help my community? Well, I need to spend more time with my patients. Well, that means I need to see less patients. Well, that also means I need to not take insurance, because I can't be restricted with things that I can and can't do, because I get paid for this, but not for that. You know what I mean? So like, I wanted to be able to make my own decisions and play my own game, not play their game. You know what I mean? So I totally relate with you on that level, and in regard to the coaching aspect, like as physical therapists or chiropractors, like we are in essence coaches, like, and for you to say that I don't need a coach and you're a physical therapist, you're the biggest fucking hypocrite in the world, because you're a coach and your patients come to you because they need a coach. You're their coach, but who's your fucking coach? You don't have one? You're a hypocrite. You know what I mean? So I firmly believe that that's everybody needs a coach. It doesn't have to be Bedros Keuilian, right? It doesn't have to be like Aaron LeBauer. Like it could be anybody. You need to find the coach that works the best for you, but you need somebody to help guide you. You know what I mean? And
we can't see our blind spots.
1000%, man. And that was the huge change in my business and personally. Like I have a coach for everything. You know what I mean? I probably have 4 total coaches right now.
Me too.
And they all help me in different areas. You know what I mean? And it's funny, I was actually just having a conversation with the last like 2 or 3 conferences I've been to. Like almost everybody has like a relation. Do you have a relationship coach?
I do not currently have a relationship coach, but that is on the list.
Because
I think I have 4 current coaches though, but not a relationship coach yet.
it's funny because I was at lunch with like 4 other PTs and they were all do you have one?
Couples therapist.
Couples therapists. That's what I'm talking about. So I was sitting at the table, right? And they were talking about it. And I was the only one at the table that didn't have one. And I'm like, wow, that's really fucked up. And I didn't think about it because one of the therapists at the table was like, well, you have a coach for your business. You have a coach for your, your training and your nutrition. You have a coach for your, your other like coaching business that you're coaching. It's like, but you don't have a coach for your, like, for your relationship. I'm like, that's a really good point. Like, I don't have a coach for that. And I probably should, you know what I mean? Like nobody has the best marriage or the best like relationship, right? But like, how can my relationship be better? Like, I want my business to be better. I want my physique to be better, but like, I don't care about my relationship. I guess that's what it says. So I'm like, man, I got to look into this. That's pretty messed up. So it's like everybody that I talk to, like you two and now included, it's like everybody has one and I don't have one. And I feel like that's an area that I could improve on. You know what I mean? So like you said, can't see your blind spots, So I just wanted to bring that up because I think it's super important that, a coach just doesn't have to be like, an advisor for just like your business, but there's coaches for everything, and I feel like we underutilize that. And yeah, it's a great point. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But
like I got a handstand coach.
Yeah, that's right. You were just saying that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's niche down. Like that's wild.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Okay, I'm going to do one more thing about you both. So yours is about the coaching, about
Yes.
how great what you're going to be launching. But I remember what I was going to talk about, Chris. So adhesion release method is great for not only cash-based PTs, we got that test retest, but it's great for insurance-based PTs too, because he does what he does in 15 minutes. And when I was an insurance-based PT, I only had about 10 to 15 minutes with the patient. So if he can get the results 10, 15 minutes, sure, they can do their exercise with the aids, so they can build their insurance or whatever, and then they can go to sleep at night knowing that they're actually making patients better with the 15 minutes. Now we're different. We use it as a tool, and I still like doing exercise and neuromuscular reeducation. So we spend an hour with our patients. I'm not sure if that's ever going to change, but so it's great, like I said, for pretty much everyone, chiropractors too, obviously, because we're manual therapists. That's what we do. We get patients better, and that's what we want. So I wanted to mention that, and then for you and your coaching stuff. And so if you're an insurance-based practice owner and you're, exactly like Chad was describing here, I would recommend you talk to Chad, because in all the coaching programs that I've been in, and all the business coaching programs, there's people that have insurance-based practices that struggle. Some of them eventually make it, but like there's a girl 2.5 years into one of my mastermind programs, and I was talking about my highest revenue month's $57K. Her highest revenue month in over like 15, 20 years is $42K, and she was trying to tell someone in there to take work comp. And I was just like, no, this is the reason why we don't take work comp. I've done this in less than 2 years and have more revenue than you do, and my PTs aren't burnt out, and I'm not burnt out. So what Chad is doing essentially is he knows exactly what it feels like to, well, I don't know if I can cut Medicare because that's my bread and butter. It keeps the lights on. And somebody, like Aaron, he's never taken insurance. He doesn't necessarily know like what to say to that. I mean, he can give a textbook answer, and that does help some people in the mastermind group as a whole help each other with the mindset shifts and stuff. But just talking to Megan Stinson, and she didn't transition, she shut it down because she had a stroke because it killed her, and then she reopened. She didn't transition, so she doesn't even necessarily know how to necessarily cut the low-hanging fruit off, switch the mindset of, okay, you're no longer going to be having the same referrals anymore, and you just have to change your mindset that the referral sources are going to be coming from a completely different area. So literally, Chad can help with that, and he can collapse time because he has what you want. He's actively doing it, and then therefore he can collapse time. He's got all the 3 things, and I really wish that some of the other group leaders and stuff that think they can help everyone really would actually just send him a referral and say, oh, you take insurance and you want to transition? Well, go to Chad, because he knows what it feels like and he can collapse time faster. I may be able to help you, but I can't help you like he can help you.
Sure.
So you guys got to
man.
get to
I
him.
appreciate that. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. Yeah, that's like my biggest thing right now is like fakeness out there and all the people out there that are, and my advice too for people that are, and I just had this conversation with a PT yesterday here at this conference, is do your homework, because there's so many people out there. Like, coaching is like a big thing right now. Like, everybody wants to be a coach, which is great. You know, I think we do need coaches, right? But there's a lot of people out there that are it's unrealistic. You know what I mean? Where they're saying, let me help you, grow your practice to blah, 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 right? Where it's like, there's no credibility behind what this person is saying. They literally probably had a business that didn't survive, so they shut it down. They're like, I'm just going to be a coach. You know what I mean? They're not actively doing it. I think, like you said, like Greg, Aaron, like, you, Chris, like, you guys all have practices that you guys are currently growing still and working in. And then you're also doing these other coaching programs to also help people. Like, your credibility is your business that you've already built. And a lot of these people out here not only don't have the business, but probably never even had the business. You know what I mean? And it's like, you're asking somebody's advice that, like you said, hasn't been there, and I think that people need to do their homework and find those people that are not only have done it, but are still currently doing it. You know what I mean? And I think that speaks volumes to me, and that's what attracts me to a coach. See, I want to see what you've done. Show me that you're still doing it, and show me how you're doing it. I want to know, like you said, it just it just speeds everything up and learn from my mistakes. You know what I mean? Because it took me 3 years to transition away from insurance. I can do it for you in a year. You know what I mean? So why waste 2 extra years dealing with that bullshit when you don't have to? There's just so many things that you run into that you can totally avoid if you know the steps up front, So, no, this is a good rip. I had a great time. I will put in the show notes, I'll put everything along with your practice and what you're doing, as well as you, Chris, with the adhesion release technique, right? Method. Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh my
close.
God. See?
Too close.
Oh my God.
It's active release.
ARM.
Different.
ARM. Just think arm, because you got some big arms.
Yes.
So,
yes.
just think arm.
I will put all that in the show notes so that people can look more into that for sure. And I will too as well. So no, thanks guys for being on the podcast and get to enjoy day 2 of the BK Live event now. Cool.
Thanks for having
Thanks,
us, man.
guys.
Hell yeah, man.
Thank you for joining us in the rack this week. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes. You can also find us online at proformptma.com or on social media at proformptma. And remember, if you train inside the rack, you better be thinking outside the rack.